Welcome to the DC Redistricting Online software tutorial video. In this video, you will learn how to use this software to create a valid redistricting plan and to submit it to the DC Council for their consideration. First, I will review some of the terms and concepts we'll be working with in this tutorial, starting with redistricting itself. So what is redistricting? Redistricting is the redrawing of political boundaries every 10 years following the decennial census. Every 10 years, the U.S. Census Bureau counts all the people residing in the United States and publishes that data publicly. The 50 states in the district use that information to rebalance the populations within their political jurisdictions by redrawing those boundaries. States redraw their congressional districts, and here in DC, we redraw our ward boundaries. The purpose of redrawing them to rebalance their population is to ensure equal representation. Each ward council member should be representing an equal number or an equal portion of the district's population. In the preceding 10 years since the last redistricting, population growth has caused those balances to become unequal. Our job is to rebalance them. So let's look at some numbers we'll need to keep in mind in order to do this. The district's population, according to the 2020 census, is 689,545 people. Since we have 8 wards, if we divide that number by 8, the mathematically numerically ideal population for each ward would be 86,193 people. Here in the real world, mathematical ideals are hard to achieve, so our goal is to get within 95% of that ideal population for each ward. So we're allowing ourselves a 5% variance plus or minus from 86,193. That 5% is 4,310. So our rebalanced wards should have a minimum population of 81,883 people, up to a maximum of 90,503 people. Another concept we need to review to use this software is census geography. When the Census Bureau conducts a count of the people living in the United States, they don't just report back the total for the country, or the total number of people in each state, or the total number of people in the district. Instead, they divide that entire country into smaller pieces and report back the number of people residing in each of those pieces. The largest division that the census performs this way is tracts. Here you can see census tracts that make up the District of Columbia. The census also divides these tracts into smaller pieces that they call blocks, and they report back the number of people that live in each block group. And you can see in the lighter blue lines, the tracts divided into their constituent block groups. They further divide block groups into blocks, and you can see all of the census blocks within the district. DC's redistricting software takes these census geographies and uses them like building blocks to assemble the wards. As tracts, block groups, and blocks are assigned to wards, the software adds up all of the people residing in each of those pieces and arrives at a total population for the ward. However, DC code stipulates that the boundaries of the 8 wards should conform to the greatest extent possible to the boundaries of the census tracts. Which means, as we're using this tool, although the tracts, block groups, and blocks are all available to us, to the greatest extent possible, our job is to use the tracts to build our wards into only block groups and blocks when necessary to achieve our districting goals. So let's start working with the application itself. DC Redistricting Online runs entirely in your web browser. So open your computer's web browser and type this address into the address bar. It's dcredistricting.esriemcs.com. You might also want to bookmark it for future reference. When you go to the site, you'll see the landing page. In the center, there's a green link. If you've already created an account, you can sign in directly using this link. If you haven't yet created an account, click on the Create an Account link. You can also get a new password if you've forgotten your password with this link here. So I'm going to log in. And now I'm in the application. When you first open the application, or when you first log into the application, you're presented with this open plan screen. This is how you access the redistricting plan files that are saved within the program. On the left, there's a set of folders. It's by default showing you recent plans, the plans that have been most recently opened with this account. Under that is My Plans. Any plans you've previously created will be saved here. And Shared Plans. Shared Plans contains listings of groups. These are called share groups that you may have created or joined if other people have invited you to join their groups. By default, there's a share group called Everyone, and within it is a starting template that's been set up with the 8 wards as they exist today before they've been redistricted in this exercise. So we're going to use that starting template by selecting it in the middle of the window and then clicking Open. Alternately, you can also create a plan from scratch. This will require you to specify all of the parameters yourself, right down to how many wards there should be, what colors they should be, what deviation from populations there should be. Really just a lot of information that is not necessary if you use the starting template instead, and we're not going to cover using the create a plan in this tutorial. So let's open the starting template, and you'll see the application opens the plan, and we see the 8 wards as they exist right now. So the application is divided into 3 main parts. There's a tool ribbon at the top, where the functions of the application are grouped into tabs. Under each tab are various tools, and the workflow is set up that you'll work through the tabs from left to right as you create, open, modify, check, and then submit your plan. In the middle of the screen is the main map where you can see the districts or wards as we're laying them out. You can also see the census geographies. That's the thin black lines on the screen. In this case, we're working with the census tracts. At the bottom of the screen is a table called the district window. The table shows you the statistics about the wards as you're modifying them. So this is a live view of population statistics as you're making changes to the boundaries. You can also specify the colors of them here, whether or not they're protected from edits. So the first column is total population. That is the total population of the ward. Then comes target deviation, how far that total population is from the ideal population we mentioned earlier. And then a series of demographic statistics from the 2020 census. And these can be customized, which we'll cover later in the tutorial. So the tools in the file tab we'll go over first. These are very similar to the tools you'd see in most Windows programs. They handle saving and opening files, in this case, redistricting plan files. On the left is new. You can create a brand new or redistricting plan from scratch when you specify all the parameters. Again, we're not going to cover that. There's far too many details to go into. Opens a plan. We get the same dialog that we've just covered when you click on the open button. Save saves the current plan. Save as saves the current plan under a new name, which in fact is what we want to do after we've opened the starting template, because the starting template is write protected so that it stays the same for everyone when they open it. We can save our own copy of it to work from with the Save As button. So we're going to do that now. We'll give it a name. Click OK. Now we've saved the plan as our own copy and we're free to change it, and they save those copies. We're no longer working with the starting template. Continuing on the File tab, there are two more buttons that are similar to Save and Open. They are Open Local and Save Local. These work the same as the normal Save and Open buttons, except that the files are saved to a directory of your choice rather than in the cloud with the application. So if you'd like to have all of your plan files saved locally to your own computer or to a thumb drive, you can use these two tools to do so. Save Local, you'll ask for a plan name and then where to save it. And then the inverse, Open Local, will ask where is the local file that you've saved. Print and Plan Book are excellent tools for sharing maps of your redistricting plan. I think that they're such good sharing tools that I'm going to cover them under the Share tab instruction later in the plan, in the tutorial. Export will save GIS file formats files of your ward boundaries, so you can work with them in GIS software such as ArcGIS and ArcGIS Pro. The next tab on the application is the Learn tab. This tab is a little different than the others. It does not contain any tools. It's simply a reference for a general broad outline of how the application works and some links to educational materials about the application. So moving on to the View tab. The View tab contains tools for customizing the appearance of the application. Working from the left to the right on this tab, we see over here target mean. That means the target population we're aiming for in our redistricting for each ward. And this checkbox below it, show target values, if checked, will add a column to the district window, just for giving us a reminder of what the target mean is that we're aiming for each ward. So for each ward in the list, it just repeats the number, letting us know that that's the goal that we're aiming for. So our current population's to the left of it, and our deviation from that target to the right of it. You can choose to add that to the table or not, as you wish. Next over are two checkboxes that are mutually exclusive. You can choose one or the other: display lines or fill districts. What these will do is take the colors that are specified down here in the district window and either fill the interiors of the wards with that color or make them hollow and use an outline in that color for that ward. Again, this is your own preference. You can decide which you prefer. And the colors themselves are also something you can change yourself. Just click on a color box and pick another color if you prefer a different color. Next over are some checkboxes for specifying parameters. Display locks will determine whether the map will show that a ward is locked to edits or not. You can protect a ward from being edited as you're working. If, for instance, you're working on a neighboring ward and don't want to accidentally change one you've already completed, what you do is over in the list of wards, you pick one and click the lock checkbox. And because I have display locks checked, the ward has a hatch pattern through it to let us know that it is now write protected. If you uncheck this box, the hatch mark reminder goes away, but the ward is still locked. It does not turn the lock off. It just determines whether the map shows a reminder of that lock or not. Display names decides whether we put a label on the map for each ward boundary, for each ward area. Shorten names, we can choose to make the name shorter with just the number rather than the word ward. And show district field adds the population currently to the ward label. So without it, you just find out what ward it is. If you check it, you see the live population count for it. Deviation coloring is where we can color in the labels to let us have a reminder when ward's population is beyond the allowable deviation from the ideal. So if I click this box, we can choose a different color. Currently, any ward's population that is above 5% more than the target value will be in green, and if it's below the 5% of the target value, it'll be in red. But those colors are customizable, and you can choose any colors you wish. You can also, if you desire, fill the ward itself in with these colors rather than just the labels. This could cause trouble determining where ward boundaries are when wards that are next to each other are both in the same category. So I think it's preferable to use the labels instead. The district window button, when clicked, will pop the district window from the bottom of the map into its own window, which can then be resized and reshaped as desired, freeing up more space to view the map. It can always be put back to the place it was in by just closing that window, and it'll snap back into place. So the next tab on the ribbon is the Create tab. The Create tab contains tools for navigating the map, for assigning census geographies to the wards, and for selecting which census population statistics we'll be viewing in the district window at the bottom of the application. So first up, this demographics button on the left of the ribbon is where we'll determine which demographic statistics we're going to view in the district window. When you click it, you get this menu showing you lists of census variables. They're organized into groups. You can expand a group and see the statistical variables listed within it. You can select any of them, and when you do, they will appear on the district window beneath. In any group, you can expand it and select individual variables from within it, or alternately, you can select the group name itself and bring in all of the variables within it. To the right of the individual variables are written out descriptions of what that variable is, because sometimes the name itself is too short to understand. There is a trade-off to picking these variables. Certainly go through all of them and use the ones that are important to your work. But when too many are selected, the district window can become unmanageable. There's so many variables that you have to scroll around a lot to see them, and it can be unwieldy. So it's best to view all variables available and then choose just the ones that are relevant to your work and none of the others to keep your district window to a manageable width. In the center of the ribbon, we have these navigation tools. These are how we move around on the map, zoom in, zoom out, etc. So the leftmost tool is a panning hand. It's called the pan tool. If you click it and then click and drag on the map, it'll move it around without changing your zoom level. To zoom in and out on the map, there are several different ways to do it. The simplest way to zoom in is to simply just double click on the map anywhere and you will zoom in. The plus tool in the top left corner does the same thing, and the minus tool next to it zooms out an equal amount. Back on the toolbar ribbon, there are these plus and minus magnifying glass tools. They are similar to just clicking on the map, but they also have an additional method of zooming. Once you've selected one, you can drag a box on the map with it, and it'll zoom the map to the extent of the box that you drew. The magnifying glass tool works the same way. If you drag a box, you'll zoom out an appropriate extent. Next to these two are these zoom extent history buttons. They'll move you back and forth through the history of how you've moved around the map. If you want to go back to somewhere you've been previously, and then forward again to where you started. The last navigation tool is the zoom to the extent button. What this will do when clicked is zoom you out to the entire district all at once, regardless of where you were zoomed in previously. Next to the navigation tools on the ribbon is the scale bar. The scale bar is synchronized to the map in that as you zoom in and out on it, there's a yellow tick mark that travels across the scale bar, showing you what scale your current zoom level is. Also, there's a text description of your scale as a ratio. In addition to the tick mark, yellow tick mark, there are also 3 magenta tick marks. These represent scale points where the map will switch which census geography you're working with. And there's also a text description above it, and also with the navigation tools to remind you of which census geography is being shown on the map. This is important because we're required to work with tracks to the greatest extent possible. So we want to make sure as we're selecting geographies and adding them to wards, that it's telling us we're working with tracks. When you zoom in further on the map, you see the smaller geographies, the block groups, and then as I zoom in even further, it shows me the blocks. These, again, magenta tick marks represent the points where, as the yellow tick mark crosses them, you will switch to a different level of census geography. The Identify tool, which we'll be going over next, is grouped with the navigation tools on the Create tab. What the Identify tool does is it allows us to inspect the census demographic variables for individual census geography. So where the district window at the bottom summarizes census demographics on the entire wards, this tool allows us to look at those same variables for an individual census geography to help us determine whether or not we should add it to a ward as we're building our redistricting boundaries. So when you click on the tool, an Identify window pops out from the side of the map. And then when you click on the map, it highlights the census geography that you've clicked on in yellow, and it shows you the demographics for that individual geography. By default, this checkbox here that says use grid demographics only may not be checked. If that's the case, the application shows you every single demographic variable it has in its database. If that's what you'd like, then there it is. Probably not so useful though, so instead, if you check that box, what that will do is only show you the variables that you've already selected for your demographics window, your district window demographic variables. Click across the map, see different census geographies and its associated demographics. When you're finished, you can click this clear selection button to remove the selected highlighted yellow boundary from the map. You can close the Identify window with the small arrow at the top right corner of the window, and it'll shrink back to this state it was in earlier. This window actually has several purposes, and it has tabbed groups along the bottom, similar to how the ribbon works. The Identify tab is the one that we were just viewing. There's also a Contents and a Legend tab. Contents allows you to add additional reference layers to the map that you might find informative as you're deciding on your redistricting boundaries. These layers are not yet finalized at the time of this tutorial, but some of the ones present at the moment at least. For instance, you can see the prior wards from the 2002 redistricting, ANCs, SMDs, school locations. Again, not finalized yet, but they will be at the time of your viewing this tutorial. Legend simply shows you the color and style of the census geographies on the map. It's a thin black line in most cases. And again, the identify tool we have just previously covered. And you can, regardless of which tab you're on, you can close this window always with the small arrow at the top right. The base map button at the far right of the Create tab lets you control the base map imagery behind the plan boundaries themselves. The base map is the reference data you see in the background here, like the roads, topography, parks, points of interest. If you click this button, you'll be presented with different base map options. You can choose any of them, switch them as many times as necessary. By default, the streets base map is selected. Any of the other ones are usually similar information, just presented in a different style, so you can choose a style that works best for either highlighting or not obscuring things. The first two are of a different nature. These are actually aerial imagery, so you can see what's literally on the ground in a given location. Imagery and imagery with labels are the same imagery, just whether or not you're including place names above them. And again, these can be switched over as frequently as you wish using the base map button. Whatever is currently selected will be saved with the plan when you save the plan. So the next time you open the plan, it'll have the base map that was chosen last, but you can always come back and change it again from this button. The tools in the redistricting portion of the Create tab are how we assign census geographies to the wards. The way these tools work is you first select a ward that you'd like to add geographies to. So in this case, I'm going to select Ward 2 down here in the district window. You do that by selecting the name of the ward itself, and it will highlight in gray. Let me expand this so we can see all of the wards at once. Alternately, you can select a ward by using the drop-down in the ribbon above the selection tools. Whichever method you use will be reflected in the other method. They are synchronized to each other. So again, I'm going to select Ward 2. And then these are the 4 selection tools that I have available. They are select with a point, select by dragging a rectangle, select by drawing a polygon, and select by drawing a line. And I'll demonstrate each. I'll start with select by point. I have Ward 2 selected. What's going to happen is anywhere on the map that I click with this tool, whatever census geography is beneath that tool, that click spot, will be added to the ward that I have selected. It's also important to note what level of census geography we're looking at on the map when we do this. Recall that we are required to work with census tracts to the greatest extent possible when designing our ward boundaries. If we zoom in far enough that it's showing us blocks and block groups, we should be aware of that before using these tools. So I'm going to zoom back out until I'm looking at tracts. I'm going to, again, click on the map. And as I do, whatever census geography, census tract in this case, I've clicked on, gets assigned to Ward 2 because I have Ward 2 selected. The next method is select by rectangle. This tool works by dragging a rectangle across the map. And any census geographies that intersect that rectangle will be assigned to the ward that's been chosen. You'll notice as I make these changes that the live population totals of the ward boundaries, both on the map and in the district window, are updated on the fly, as well as the warning labels that let us know if those populations are too high or too low. The application continuously does this as we make changes to the boundaries. The next tool over is select by polygon. So I'm going to select that tool and draw a polygon. And any census geographies, tracts in this case, that fall within that polygon will be assigned to Ward 2. Lastly is select by line. This tool works similar to the last two, where we're going to draw a line across the map, and any census geographies that cross that line will be assigned to the ward selected. Next to the 4 selection methods are undo and redo buttons, which can come in very handy if you've clicked a little outside of the area you meant to. You can just back your selections up until you get to the one that you want to undo, and you could also redo them if you decide they were okay after all. So I'm going to back these up to the starting point. Next to the undo and redo buttons is a select to district button. What this will do is just quickly zoom you to whatever ward you have selected on the map. Click a ward, click that tool, you will zoom to the extent of that ward, plus a little extra around the edges so you can work on the boundary. After that tool are the lock and unlock geography tools. These will lock census geographies from being added to wards or from being changed from what ward they're in to another ward. So if there is a particular edge you're working on and then some of the tracks you want to protect from accidentally clicking on, you can use this tool to lock them. Select lock, and then as you click on the map, the census geography you click on is locked from edits, and it cannot be moved from one ward to another regardless of what the selection tools specify. You can undo this by using the unlock button and just clicking the same ones again. Similarly, you can lock entire wards from edits. You can protect an entire ward from changes as you're working along its boundary, for instance, by checking the checkbox next to it in the column on the district window. So if I'm working along the boundary between Ward 1 and 6, and I don't want to accidentally change Ward 5, I could lock Ward 5 by clicking the checkbox. You'll see Ward 5 is now showing a hatch pattern, meaning that it is protected from accidental edits. So what you'll see is I'll now select Ward 1, we'll say, and I'll drag a rectangle across a large area, including part of Ward 5. But none of Ward 5's census geographies will be added to Ward 1, although the ones from Wards 2 and 6 will be, because Ward 5 is locked. And you get a message pointing out that in fact it's locked, and that's why it didn't do it. I'm going to undo that. That was a little messy looking. Similar to lock, there's a column called hide. Hide will literally turn a ward off on the map. This is not the same as locking it though, despite the fact that the ward is not being shown. Its geographies can still be assigned to other wards, and geographies can still be assigned to it. This makes it a rather dangerous tool to use because you can't see the changes that you're making. It's recommended that you would probably only use hide in conjunction with lock. Hide a ward and lock it at the same time to just remove it from the display while you're working on other things around it. So the last item to cover in the Create tab is the unassigned category. You'll notice that on the district window, in addition to the 8 wards, there's a row called Unassigned. This is a grouping for all of the census geographies that have not been assigned to any wards. Currently in the plan, all census geographies have been assigned to a ward, so there are none. The total numbers for all statistics is 0. But this category works just like all the other ward categories do, where you can select it from the list or from the dropdown and pick the selection tool. And as you select any ward geographies that fall within the selected area are assigned to the unassigned category. So now these census tracts are not part of Ward 3, they're not part of any ward. If you wanted to start from a blank slate, you could select this category, drag a rectangle and drag it across the entire district, and then all geographies will be unassigned to any ward, and you'll have a blank slate from which to build the wards. You'll see now that all of the population totals are assigned and no people whatsoever are in any of the wards. I'm going to undo that and undo it again to show the last tool, which is find unassigned geographies. As you're working, and if you're working in a lot of detail along a boundary with census blocks, for instance, which can be quite small, it can be hard to notice when something has gone wrong, and you may have perhaps accidentally left a few slivers not assigned to anything. When you zoom out quite far on the map, you can't really see them that clearly. What this tool does here will zoom you to any unassigned geographies. It'll give you a pop-up list of the ones it knows about, and as you click on them in this list, it'll zoom the map to each of them, and you can then decide where they should have gone using the same methods we just went over. So I would say, okay, this one was an accident. It clearly looks like it belonged in Ward 6. So I'd select Ward 6, pick a selection tool, add it to Ward 6, and then go through the other ones the same way. Ward 6, selection tool, select, and then the last one. The next tab on the tool ribbon is the Review tab. The Review tab. The Review tab contains tools for summarizing the demographic characteristics of the redistricting plan, for checking the validity of the plan, and for adding graphical notes to the map. The three leftmost buttons are similar to each other. Each will bring up an interactive chart of the demographic data that you have chosen from your district window. The first one, plan histogram, gives you a bar chart, and you can select each of the variables from your district window and to see each ward's values for that demographic characteristic in a bar chart. As you hover over them, you get the actual numerical values represented by the bars. Land distribution is similar, but it gives you the same demographic data in a pie chart form so that you can see the proportion of each ward to the district total as a whole. Again, as you hover over them, you get the numeric values that are being represented by the pie slices. District distribution is similar to plan distribution, except that it's showing you the demographics for an individual ward rather than for the District of Columbia as a whole. So you see all of the characteristics from your district window, but just for an individual ward. And again, interactive, you can hover and see the actual numerical values. I'm going to skip over integrity for a moment and go to reports, because this is similar to the three buttons we've just covered. Reports gives you a drop-down menu where you can choose various reports to be generated from the statistics in your district window. These will actually open in a separate file that you can then save. You can have a PDF, an Excel file, or an HTML file. You can choose a full set of demographic variables and say OK. And when you do, the report will be automatically generated and you can open it. There are quite a few reports to choose from. I'm not going to go into all of them. Feel free to explore them after your plan has been completed to your satisfaction. Map notes, I'll go over next, is a place where you can add graphical markups on top of the map. These are not in any way tied to the data underlying the map. It does not affect the statistics or the analysis. It is simply graphical markups for you to have on your map as reminders or notes or clarifications. You can choose from line work, dots, polygons, or text that you can add to a map. So for instance, I could decide that I want to make a note about this area here, perhaps for someone I'm sharing this plan with. So I'm going to just draw a polygon and then add some text. Say, oops, this is the place we talked about. Very good note, but this is just for demonstration purposes. Any graphic you add with map notes, you can right click on it and either change the color of it, you can change the size of it, you can move it to a new spot on the page. Or you can delete it altogether. You can also clear everything all at once from the map notes if you'd like to get rid of them all with the clear all button. These map notes act like a layer on your map the same way that other reference layers do. So if you'll call back here, this window on the side of the map, if we expand it and go to contents, there's a listing for something called map notes. You can choose to turn map notes off. This does not delete the notes. They're still present. They're just turned off on the map, and then you can turn them back on again if they're in the way, but you need to work around them, but you don't want to delete them. This is a way to get them temporarily hidden from view. Lastly, on the Review tab is the Check Integrity button. Clicking this button will run a series of automated tests that check the validity of the plan. You have to run these tests before you can submit it because only a valid plan that has passed these tests is allowed to be submitted. I'll run down the what these tests do. The dual assignment check verifies that each census geography is only assigned to a single ward, and this one has passed that. Population summary check verifies that the total population count in all wards adds up to the total district population, which it passed. District count check makes sure that all wards have at least one census geography within them, and these do. Maximum deviation is verifying that the ward populations are within the allowed 5% deviation from our ideal number of 86,193. And since this is the set of wards as they exist today with no changes, they do not pass that test. Null assignment check verifies that the census geographies within the district have all been assigned to a ward, that no one is in the unassigned category. And this passes that. Connectivity check verifies that all parts of a ward are connected with the rest of the ward. You can't have islands of ward not connected to each other. You can't have ward 1 here and then a small piece of ward 1 over here. Each ward has to be a self-contained area, and this passes that check. Anytime a test fails, the details button next to it will be highlighted and enabled, and you can click on it and get details about how the test has failed. This one, it's telling us that ward 6, 7, and 8 are all outside of the allowed deviation. That ward 6 is far above, and wards 7 and 8 are below. So the next tab on the tool ribbon is the Share tab. And the Share tab contains tools for adding supplemental information to your plan file and for sharing your plan with other people. So working from the left to the right, the Attach Files button is where you can add additional documents to your plan for inclusion when you submit this to the DC Council. So if you have further documentation about the changes you've made, or you're representing an organization rather than yourself, or you have other information you'd like to include, statistics, tables, research, you can add those files here and they'll be included with your plan when you submit it. The way the tool works is when you have the attachment window open, you click the Upload File button. And when you do that, you'll get a file open browser where you can pick a file and add it. Once you've done so, any files you've added will show up in the list. Any file that's in the list, you can then download, save as. So for instance, if this was someone else's plan that was saved with you, you could download the files they've uploaded, or you can delete them from the attachments list if you decide they're no longer relevant for inclusion. Once you're done, you hit the close button. Next to that is the information button. This is a dialog where you can add some contact info and some small space for analysis and details about your plan. Certainly fill this out with whatever information you feel is relevant, but really, if you have in-depth information about your plan, it's better to use the attached files method of including that information. The comments section is a place where you can add or view comments that have been made by you or others to the plan that's currently open. Again, this is more relevant when you're sharing plans with others. You can see comments that they've made about a plan, or you can add comments to a plan that someone has been sharing with you. To add a comment, you simply type it in the comment box, add, and it will show up in the list of comments. You cannot delete a comment once that has been added to the list. Access log shows you the access history for the currently open plan, who's opened it, who's saved it, who's looked at it. Is a continuous log in this window. Sharing is organized within groups. You don't share a plan with an individual person. You create groups of users and share plans to those groups. So for instance, I'm going to open the Share Plan button. What happens here is when you open this, you'll see a list of groups of which you are a member, and you can choose to share the plan with as many of them as you choose. Currently in this user account, I only have a single group, so I could check that one box and I'll be sharing with that group. Below that is a choice of how you're going to share the plan. You can choose to share it read-only where someone else can view it, but not make any edits to it, or you can choose to share it completely where they can also edit it, which is read-write mode. So when you select a group, all members of that group will then be able to see that plan in their sharing folder list for that group in the File Open dialog. So related to that is the Manage Groups button. You can't share a plan with a group if you're not a member of a group. So Manage Groups is where you can create groups and invite people to join them. By default, when you first open this dialog and you haven't created a group yet, the only button you'll see active is the first one on the left here, the Create Group button. If you click that button, you'll be presented with the choice to create a name and a description of a group. And when you do so, it'll create a group and it'll add it to the list of groups here. I've already created one group, so that's why I can see one here. and I have the other buttons then active. When you select a group from the list, you can choose to edit the properties, which are the name and description like you just created one with. You can delete a group, and you can invite people to be members of the group. The way you invite people to a group is you have to search for them by name. You do not by default get a list of all users of the application. The idea with sharing is that you are already collaborating with these people, and so you'll know who they are when you want to invite them. So you would search for a name, and the search works both on their username and on their first and last name as entered when they created their account. It's a partial search, so you don't have to fill out the whole thing. You can just type in a few characters and see who fits that set of characters you wrote. So I could, for instance, pick one of these two people and send an invitation to them. If someone accepts your invitation and they're now members of the group, you'll see them listed here in this window here, the list of members of the group. Currently, no one else has joined this group, so there are no members of it. The flip side of that process is group invites, where you can control whether you accept or decline the invitations that others have sent you to join groups that they have set up. It looks very similar to the last one. You'll have a list of groups here if you've been invited to one. And when you click on it, it'll tell you information about it, the name of it, and the description that the other user set up, as well as who that user was, and then a list of other members that are already in the group. You can choose to decline or accept the invitation. If you accept, you'll then be a member of that group, and you'll see that group listed in the list of groups under manage groups. So I'm going to accept this invitation, and then we'll see it in that list. If you choose to decline an invitation, it will be removed from this screen and you will not later be able to accept it. So I'm going to hit accept and then close the window. And if I go back to manage groups, I should now see two groups that I'm a member of because I've just accepted the invitation to someone else's group and I've also got a group of my own. And if I look at this one, I can see that I am a member now of this group. Edit profile is just a place where you can change your information about your user account. You can change your name, you can change your email address, you can change your password. The only thing you cannot change is your actual username that is set with the account. So now that I've joined a group that someone else has invited me to, if they've shared any plans to that group, I should be able to see them in the open dialog that we started this tutorial with. On the far left side, there's a shared plans group. And in there, you'll see the groups that I'm a member of. Before, it only showed me the everyone group, but now there's a group called my group. That's the one I was invited to join. And you can see there's now a plan in there that I can view that has been shared with me. So when we reviewed the file tab earlier, I mentioned that the print and plan book buttons were excellent ways to share your plan with others, so that I would therefore cover them when we covered the share tab. So let's go over those two tools now. The print button, when you click it, opens up a new dialog where you can create a map of your plan and customize it to your liking. Lots of options for checkboxes for changing things. You can add north arrows, scale bars. You can select these objects and move them around on the page. When you select one, you get the properties for it in the sidebar where you can change options about it. This also applies to the map itself. When you click on the map, you'll get the properties for the map where you can decide how the map looks. A lot of these options are similar to the options we had in the view tab of the application, where we can choose to display labels or not, choose to fill the districts or have their colors be applied to their outlines or not. We can add the base map in the background or not. We can also add annotation to the map, annotation meaning text, so a title For instance, the way this works is when you click the Add Annotation button, you'll get this dialog at the bottom. When you first pick a text size, and then you type the text you'd like to add. And that text appears on the map, and you can then grab and move it around, similar to how you could do that with all the other map elements. After you've made the map the way you would like, and you're satisfied with its appearance, you can hit the print button and it will save a PDF of the map, which you can then either open immediately or save to a file. Alternately, if you're in that dialog and you want to get back to the main application without creating that map, just hit the cancel button and you will close out this dialog and return to the map window. The plan book button is very similar to the print button, except instead of making a map just of your plan as a whole, you get the same option to make that map of the plan as a whole, customized exactly with the same options you had previously. But in addition to that, you get an additional page for each ward in the plan. So since we have 8 wards, we'll have a total of 9 pages, an overall map and then an individual map for each ward. And again, you can change all the same options to each of these maps that you did to your individual ward map, to your individual plan map. You do have to set each of the options individually. You cannot apply something to all of the maps. Each map gets its own customizations. And just like with the print button, when you've made this map book customized the way you like, hit the print button and you'll generate a PDF, or hit cancel to not generate a PDF and return to the main application window. The last tab on the ribbon is the Submit tab. This is the tab that we use to submit our plan to the council once we've completed it and attached any supplemental information we'd like and are satisfied with the results we've achieved. The Submit Plan toolbar or ribbon has only one tool on it, the Submit Plan button. When you click it, what this will do will run all of the integrity checks from the Review tab earlier, because you can only submit a plan once it has passed all of those checks. So we'll click this button. We'll say no to that, and you'll see it run all of the checks again. Now again, because this is the state of the wards today without any changes, we have not passed the maximum deviation check. Our wards populations are not balanced correctly. Because of that, we're not able to submit the plan to council, but if we had passed all of these checks, these would all have green check marks. We would hit an OK button, and what would appear next would be the Submit Plan dialog, which I will show from a PowerPoint slide instead, since this plan does not pass the tests. So once you passed your tests, the application will show you this form, the Submit Plan form, where you'll fill in your contact information and plan information. You can fill in all of these if you'd like, only the asterisk marked fields are actually required. Again, I recommend that the more involved details of your plan and yourself and any organization you might represent are best described in attached documentation rather than these small fields that the form provides to you. But by all means, fill these forms in as well as attaching those files. So once you've filled these all in, you click the Submit Plan button, and what'll happen is you'll get a notification that the plan has been submitted, and you'll also receive an email with that same notification to the email address you've entered when you signed up for your account. So some things to go over when you submit a plan. Firstly, once you've done so, you cannot undo it. A plan that's been submitted cannot be unsubmitted. It is now part of council's collection of plans for them to review. Once you submit a plan, it doesn't disappear from your list of saved plans. You can still see it in your list when you're in the application. You can still open it. You can still look at it. However, You cannot save any changes you make to it after you've opened it again post submission. You can make those changes, but you will not be able to save the plan under that same name. You can save as to a new name, and those changes will be saved under that new name, while the original plan as submitted will still be available for viewing under the original name. Which leads to the point that you can submit more than one plan. You're not limited to just creating a plan and submitting it. If you have different options that you think are equally valid or viable, feel free to submit as many as you need to. Be sure to explain the differences between them and the reasons for submitting multiple plans. This concludes this tutorial of the DC Redistricting online software tool.